On the 27th of April, Tom Morris said that Jacob Weitering was the third-ranked key defender this season according to Champion data. At number 4, in an unthinkable set of circumstances at the start of the season, Jack Silvagni. Player rating flatters Silvagni even more, having only Mark Blitzovs ahead of him, with Weitering a little lower down on the ledger. These two, with a sprinkle of Nick Haynes as well, combined for 47 disposals, 22 intercept possessions, 37 marks, 13 intercept marks, 11 rebound 50s, and 17 spoils. Tie that in with some vital 1%ers by Lewis Young, who was sent back in light of a McGovern absence, and you have a backline performance which conceded 62 points. Yet again, flattering the Blues in a season where offense has held strong inconsistencies. Today, we look at the backline performance, Silvagni and Weitering in particular, as the headliners of Carlton's backline that fueled a win over the Saints. A backline which has allowed the fewest shots at goal per game and the second lowest expected score behind ladder leaders Collingwood. First and foremost, the way the game transpired benefited Carlton greatly. The game was a high-pressure one. Carlton executed 69 tackles, and that wasn't even the better output between the two teams. The key thing to note here though, 79 tackle attempts. Only 10 were broken, meaning Carlton's tackle efficiency was 23% above the norm. That screams congestion. That screams play that's less expansive, or promoting less breakaways and running options. For context, the third quarter had 35 stoppages. The AFL average for a quarter is 16. I don't know if out on the Fools count, but there were a few of those too. Not only was St Kilda's forward line congested, but Carlton's was too. Carlton's team defence was impressive and disciplined all night, which meant Carlton's tall timber was rarely, if ever, displaced, making for a solidified defensive plan. Ross Lyon also mentioned pre-game that St Kilda's ball movement needed to be less linear. Take a listen.
It's the ability to shape the ball and shift it offline with kicks or legs or hands to open the field a little bit. Otherwise, he's a pretty good defender. It'd be hard to get it to ground.
When the game lost its punch, this is where St Kilda fell into the trap of kicking in a more linear pattern, and Carlton were the beneficiaries for it. Here's the key pointer, and this is where Jack Silvagni's emergence and Nick Haynes' improvement falls into place. Silvagni's emergence shares responsibility between Weitering and Sauce. Then add Haynes in as an interceptor, a loose at stages, but still a reliable tall defender, and that means you're covered across the field aerially. How many key defenders is that Carlton sign guy? Thanks. Wait, there's more? Add Lewis Young into the mix, and you have major flexibility with the ability to alternate matchups and field placement. Take a late game example here. St Kilda kick to the left of screen. There's Silvagni and Young plugging the hole. Swing it to the other side of the ground, and Haynes and Weitering are marshalling a little bit more loosely. It gets over the back, and layering over, having come across from the weak side, there's Young, De Koning, and Silvagni at ground level. Ironically, that flexibility with field placement is probably how McGovern got injured. A defender with the license to push up the ground for an attack. And additionally, in making that Young move back in the second half, you have a set of defenders which are optimal for the way the game was being played. You'll hear Michael Voss discuss the luxury here pre-game.
Yeah, it does. It sort of enables, teams got a fair bit of work on Jacob and what sort of played back shoulder on him at times. And but that probably strategy worked more than what it does now because he's got him behind him. So I guess Weiters can probably position himself where he wants to and determine where he sets up the field and how he wants to set up the field, which is a huge advantage for us. Jack's been able to manage the other player or the depth of the field if we need to at different times, but if we need to go down that path tactically.
That's why this stat is so important and says it all, really. In this game, St Kilda scored 14 points from defensive half, with Carlton scoring 59 points from turnover. Carlton's defensive discipline, majorly from the midfielders when St Kilda were moving forward, ensured a run and carry game style with efficient kicking was eliminated, optimising the tools. That was something that torched Carlton early in the contest. Let's take a short look at that. Carlton have a spare to commence, but with Webster inching forward, the roll-ups commence. The man over the back is next man up as Hill draws Sard in, and that's the key overload, forcing Sard to park himself forward, which screws up the rotations across and allows for a St Kilda advancement over the back. This ultimately has Jackson Binns on Jack Higgins, which really should have been a walk-up mark. And this is where Carlton's margin for error grows. Here's the difference a few minutes later. The same dynamic of a loose to start occurs, but White accounts for 2. You don't have that defensive overload, with Hollands doing a better job to keep close to Hill. And you've got Haynes, who decides to drop back, stifling St Kilda's attack. Then, Carlton's support comes in to assist, blanket them more so, and Haynes plays his role. But that goes without saying, if it goes over, Silvagni and Weitering still haven't been exhausted as resources and are working their way behind the ball on the weak side, a mechanism we've already talked about. As we've seen, even in the situations where there was potential for ball movement, whether this is pacey ball movement or expansive widespread ball movement, you saw the aerial versatility's importance across the field. St Kilda clear from their defensive 50, and a mark opens the door for a breakaway. Silvagni was up at 50 on Sharman. McGovern lets Philippou take the grab. He drops back, but this goes without mentioning, Haynes also remained back as Caminiti came up to the ball, and Weitering is also behind the ball. Not only do you have players with verticality on this line, but should it exceed that point, with Saints dashing back to make themselves options, that'll promote a long kick right into the lap of exactly this, with support behind the ball. What's equally important is McGovern's positioning and Akers' backtracking to ensure a kick over the back or into space is protected out wide, with Haynes and Cowan ready to swoop or zone off on the left and drop back to protect the transition. That leaves the kick up the guts, right into Carlton's hands. Here's another great example. Weitering is the deepest back. Haynes is there too. In essence, a 2-on-1. Silvagni is nearer to where the ball will be headed. Haynes is happy to play in front, with Weitering ready to apply himself behind the forward. When McConnell possesses, Weitering's presence causes indecision. Walsh is also dropped in behind as well. St Kilda want to go direct, but going wide would be detrimental and play into the Blues' hands. A handball forward would compress St Kilda, and Sharman's trying to get deeper, but can't keep up with the carry. When Hall passes to Hill, he's running straight into traffic, and you end up going wider anyway for a shittier result. The dynamic shifts without this trio on field, as we saw last week, and it's almost like that discipline up the ground works both ways. The men behind the ball promote that. Elsewhere, forward 50 stoppages for the Blues meant Carlton could be more compact. Pressing up the ground and St Kilda in their stagnated ball movement were kicking to Carlton's tall timber when they did enter inside 50. It's really that simple. Everything that transpired favoured Carlton, especially in the second half. And I really want to highlight an unsung hero that really shows the up-the-ground work preventing St Kilda's run, supplied by someone like a Wanganeen Millera, who shows his worth in this area. We're up by 9. Sharman takes a beautiful grab off a clearing kick. Haynes drops off, Young is to the left. Weitering and Orsos are behind the footy. Now, Francis Evans was playing on Wanganeen Millera late in the game. Sharman looks right, but adopts that down-the-line style we've mentioned was detrimental. The massive play here is the smother. That feeds into an errant handball, which leads to a bit of a snowball effect. A fumble, defenders close, and Wanganeen Millera gets pinned for holding the ball. Mackay, Walsh, Hollands, Evans, forwards or mids around the ball with Sard. Your defenders can drop back and apply themselves in those intercept positions, keeping your goal protected. Your mids do the work beforehand. Had Wanganeen-Millera had an involvement heavily here, Carlton's defence, I think, would feel the heat. Jack Silvagni did not skip a beat after his week off, and I found this to be an interesting discussion that was had by Daniel Hoyne a few weeks ago. Take a listen.
What he does with ball in hand, no other key defender in the competition does. No other key defender in the competition impacts the game more through ball use than what this guy does. His ability to be able to see a corridor target and go for it is so impressive with what he's able to do, both right foot and left foot.
Here's a pretty strong depiction of the layout before Lewis Young went back, and it alludes to what I was speaking about a little earlier. It's a luxury having Weitering on one side, Silvagni on the other. Haynes is supporting Silvagni, who, if you pick between the two, Silvagni's probably needing that added support, with De Koning here as well. Strong up the ground defending means strong up the ground attacking for these defenders. And Jack Silvagni proves Daniel Hoyne's comment correct. Balks and lace out passes to Curnow. This versatility is exciting, and it did help the Blues on more than one occasion as well, building out from the back. Here's a similar example with Silvagni given license to roam, given he's got the defensive coverage behind him, due to the fact that both Sharman and Caminiti are not threats in this position. Once it hits ground level, Silvagni can assert himself as the extra man with the right mindset, but the wrong execution. Also found Sauce at ground level to be vital on more than one occasion as well, furthering this versatility which you really value defensively, especially if you've got support doing the job for you aerially. The less of a one-trick pony Sauce is, the better this team will be. I'm talking about lunging smothers, tackles, all that good stuff. And I want to give Lewis Young a shout out as well for a bunch of massive spoils he made, given the game situation. 7 of them to be exact, and he only played in the defensive half for half a match. This output was second best on the ground. This one in particular, which kickstarts a sequence for Cooper Lord's goal and speaks to Carlton's defensive coverage with their tools, a clear standout. This did happen on more than one occasion too, with regards to the versatility and expansiveness of the aerial defensive coverage. So overall, Carlton's win, when you reflect, was based on the grit and grind. It was because of this that Carlton's defense, especially in the air, thrived. Slow and misdirected ball movement by the opposition that played right into their hands. But this goes without saying that because of the amount of tall options Carlton had down back, especially later in the game, with a bit of versatility it meant that Carlton were commanding the skies practically everywhere the ball flew, and also had the reinforcement to send it back the other way. You will not see a defensive tall display as dominant as this, and while credit needs to be directed towards the efforts in the attacking and middle thirds of the ground, which served as protection, Carlton's key tools had a major part to play in the win. What are your thoughts? Where are you placing the credit for Carlton's defensive success on the weekend? But not only that, for the entire season. Thanks for tuning in. We'll chat to you for next week's analysis in a short while. But until then, stay safe and bye for now.